had actually forgotten to record for some of the fellows that are going to be offline. But yes, like I said, today we are going to be looking at the Azure Storage Solutions. We are going to be exploring blob storages, file storages, and then the queue storages. And that is our agenda for today, our agenda. Well, moving along, we want to explore some of these storage solutions. And essentially, when it comes to storing your data in Azure, you kind of have a lot of options that you can choose from. You have the queue storages. I'll be talking about that in a few minutes from now. You also get a chance to store your data in table formats. You also store your data in blobs. Well, I'll be talking about each and every category when we move along. And moving to the next slide. For this, we want to start with the Azure Blob Storage for object files, and by Azure Blob Storages, we basically get to store our data in sort of blobs. By blobs, I mean we store our data as probably documents, images, videos, and then backup formats. So essentially, Azure Blob Storage is a highly scalable cloud storage service, like I said, that allows you to store and manage unstructured data. By unstructured data, I mean documents, images, letters, videos, pictures, all that sort of data that is actually unstructured. So essentially, when you want to store that unstructured data in Azure, you first of all create an Azure account. And within that Azure Storage account, you go ahead and create a blob storage. That blob storage is going to be housing all your unstructured data formats. And within that blob storage, you can go ahead and create a blob container. By blob container, I basically mean some sort of I should call it a warehouse that basically store different sorts of unstructured data. You may actually think of a blob container as a warehouse where you get to store like several inventories within the warehouse. So you may store, let's say, construction materials. So ideally, that is conceptually the same when it comes to blob containers. So you get that sort of separate section storages. You can store your images as a separate section. You can store your data in form of videos as also a separate storage. And like I said, we are going to be demonstrating that as we move along. So moving along to the next slide, the popular use cases for Azure Blob Storage would be typically storing your large files, media accesses, and then archives. Take a look at team that may be developing an application within your an organization. So that team may consist of front-end engineers and then back-end engineers. So the back-end engineers would go ahead and set up those storage accounts within Azure, and within Azure, you might come up with an application that may actually have may want to have access to your storage accounts. So you may literally come up with those storage accounts in Azure so that they may be they may expose your data to the applications that you may be building. It can not only be used for applications, but you may go along and have several sorts of support systems for maybe machine learning, for typically Azure Machine Learning Studios. You may as well move along and do some bit of big data and analytics workloads. The other use case might be content delivery networks for global distributions. So suppose you want your data to be accessible across the globe. So you would essentially come up with you may as well use Azure Blob Storage to do all those sorts of workloads. The other one would be backing up and restoring your data across data centers. So you realize that in an organization, you might have several sorts of data that you want to store within the cloud, and suppose your organization maybe runs into some sort of disaster, like you may actually lose your data abruptly. Someone may delete your data abruptly within the company. So ideally, you might come up with an Azure Blob Storage procedure where you get to store your data within the cloud, or basically backup procedures. So essentially, that gives us an overview of the use cases for Azure Blob Storage. So the key features for the Azure Blob Storages, we essentially have two of them, and I'll be talking about briefly about each. The first one being scalability, and by scalability I mean that you basically get a sort of seamless accommodation for your growing data. Suppose you're in a big data analytics workload, so you get a chance to scale your data volumes. In other words, as the data grows continuously within your organization, so you get a chance to increase on the storage capacity. And we also have another feature called security. And security also, like I said, security is a big measure when it comes to organizational data. So for the security bit of it, you get security features like authentication and authorization, where within your organization you can actually limit the control access to your data by working with Azure Active Directory, and access signatures within the organization. We shall be looking at the Azure Active Directory in deep concept, like we are going to be exploring Azure Active Directory when it comes to one of our study sessions next week. The other security feature that Azure Blob Storage gives us is encryption. So within your organization, essentially you might have different teams working on different applications, right? But essentially you may not allow everyone to have access to customer data, like you're building an application for your e-commerce site. So this application may not be essentially accessible to each and everyone within an organization because it might have sensitive data. So Azure Blob Storage gives us that capability to encrypt our data. Of course, the information within the organization may be a little bit sensitive, like the customer data. You may not need, you may not want your company employees to have access to the customer data, like the credit card information, the address of the customer. Well, you might want access to other information for the customer, but there comes a point of time where sensitive information like the credit card information may not be accessed by your employees. The Azure Blob Storage gives us account keys and SaaS tokens as well. And we are also going to be exploring that as we know the demonstration part of that. So moving along, for the real world examples of data storage, like I told you earlier on, you may actually have different types of data within your organization. So suppose your company is developing an e-commerce platform. So essentially, you might have several sorts of data that is stored within your organization, and essentially within that e-commerce platform. You might have images, you might have videos for maybe product demonstrations. You might have media streaming services, probably serving content to your users over the internet. So you might literally come up with that Azure Blob Storage workflow to basically store your data in the cloud. The other real-world example that we can look at is backup and restore. And essentially, when it comes to like sensitive data within the organization, so enterprises basically come up with that sort of replication of your data to several regions across the globe. So like I said, like this typical example, like I said earlier on, you might be developing an application, but you may want that application to be accessible to the rest of the regions across the world. An example I would give would be Jumia. Jumia is available in most of the regions across Africa. So essentially what Jumia does is to back up the data across several regions within Africa. And essentially here we have a few regions where you can back up your data. But essentially what Jumia does is back up that data across several regions. The other example would be, is it KFC? Yes, KFC. So essentially, what KFC does is it's going to be it stores the data across several regions. There's Asia. There is also here in Africa. We also have some data centers that actually store KFC data. So in the process, you're going to be limiting the latency for your users to have access to your application data, and in the long run, your customers are going to have seamless enjoyment to your services. The other real world example would be IoT data collection. So essentially, suppose within your organization, you're working on different workloads for probably machine learning. So, and you need to store that data for it to be accessible by other teams within the development workflows. So you may essentially come up with an Azure Blob Storage to store that IoT data. You may as well think of analytics platforms for probably processing and visualizing the IoT data. So the Azure Blob Storage gives us that capability to integrate with the IoT devices to basically collect our data from those IoT devices and store them in a Azure Blob Storage format. Like I said, this IoT data may be some sort of different formats. So the Azure Blob Storage gives us that capability to store our data in several formats. Moving along, I want us to go in a practical session where we basically get to familiarize ourselves on how to set up an Azure Blob Storage workflow. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I switch to another screen. All right, so when it comes to Azure Blob Storage, you will need to first of all set up an Azure Storage account, and I'm assuming most of us have access to the Azure account, but if you don't have one, I'll be demonstrating that at the end of the session so that you may get started with this. But essentially, when it comes to the Azure Blob Storages, you need to first of all create an Azure Storage account. And how do you do that? You come to your dashboard for the Azure portal. You access that at the search menu by typing in Azure Storage accounts. Sorry. You may realize it's one of the first one. The other one would be a little bit premium. It has other features that are a bit premium, but I'm going to go with the first one. I'll go ahead and create another storage account since I have one currently. So essentially, the Azure Storage account is like other Azure services that you may encounter, and essentially everything within Azure, it's a service. So literally everything within Azure is called a service. So we want to set up our Azure Storage account service within a particular resource group. Like I said earlier on in other study sessions that we have been holding, a resource group is basically a container where you get to house your different resources. Within that resource group, you might have storage accounts, virtual machines, literally everything, anything that you may think of when it comes to the Azure portal. Essentially, here I'm going to choose a resource group. If you don't have any, you may go ahead and create one. So I'm just going to choose one that I already created. Moving along, you need to give a name to your storage account. So here I'm just going to call it lab, right? Just simple as that. Okay, it's already taken. Let me maybe take that. Blob 101. All right. Needs to be lowercase throughout. I'm just calling this event demo and lab 101. And here you need to choose a region that is next to you. For this case, I'm just going to choose South Africa because it is the closest region where I can host my storage account. If you're in another region, you can go ahead and explore those as well. For the performance part of that, for the performance section, we are going to stick with a standard one. For the premium one, you essentially choose it when you need to set up the storage disks for the virtual machines. But since I'm setting up the Azure Blob Storages, I'm going to go with a standard one. So just click on next. I'll move by the default details. I'm not going to change anything. So I'm just going to move along with the default ones. I'll click next to access my networking section. And within that, basically gives you an overview of the networking capabilities. Do you want your storage account to be accessible to all networks? If you want that, you can go ahead and click yes. Like you can go ahead and check that. And if you don't want your storage account to be accessible to all networks, you can disable that. So in the recent study sessions, I remember we explored the networking capabilities within Azure. So essentially, when you set this to disable public access and use private access, you get access to this section here where you can pretty configure different details for your storage account. But for now, let me just go with the default one, enable public access for raw networks. And I'll be leaving the rest of the details as the default ones. I'll click next. The data protection and all sorts of security measures that you may as well think of. Yeah, basically it gives you the days to retain your deleted data. Suppose one of your members accidentally deleted your storage account. So here you may essentially go ahead and define the days that probably you may want to retain that deleted data within your containers. I'm just going to leave the rest of the details as default. Move to the encryption part of that. And well, like I said, Azure Storage accounts basically gives you different key features that you may actually explore. It gives you the encryption bit of that. It gives you the data protection workflows and all that sort of and those sorts of measures. I'm just going to leave these ones, the default encryption measures, and I'll click next. The tags basically gives you the key value pairs, which you may actually use to communicate with the rest of the Azure resources within your subscriptions. Suppose you have this storage account that you're creating, but you want that storage account to be accessible to the rest of the resources within Azure. So you might actually go ahead and define those key value pairs that may be used by other resources to basically communicate to this storage account. But for now, I will maybe just say demo, and I'll go ahead and give it a value that will be basically used to communicate to the rest of the Azure other resources that you might have within the storage group, rather the resource group that you might have created earlier on. So my name is demo, and I'll go ahead and just give it a value. I'll just call that as maybe account. And you realize that here it gives you different resources that you might connect to. In other words, resources that you want them to have access to this storage account. So you may as well uncheck those that you may not need. But for now, I'll maybe just click on all. In other words, I just want all the access, all the resources within my resource group to have access to this storage account. Having created that, I'll just click review. As you realize, it is running a validation check within the background. It actually takes a couple of seconds to finalize that, and you realize that these are some of the details that I said earlier on. We have the resource group as MLSA event demos, just descriptive. The location of our storage account, of course, the resource, the deployment model, that is the resource manager. Performance, we chose that as standard, and all other details that you might explore as well, the advanced details, the networking details that we set, security, data protection, and all that. And I can see a hand up. Ivan, you can go ahead and ask.
I wanted to ask about the subscription part. As we use Azure for students, or we also switch to the one used?
Well, when it comes to the subscription, earlier on when you're signing up for the student credit, you may be given a different subscription. I remember within the organization, it is called subscription 1. So essentially, that is what you're going to be using. Under that subscription, you may create different resource groups. And within those resource groups, you may go ahead and create different resources. So a subscription is not limited to you're not limited to creating one subscription within your organization, but you might actually create several subscriptions, right? A typical example that I can give for this workflow would be within a team, you may actually work as back-end engineers and then front-end engineers. So front-end engineers might have their own subscription account. Sorry, they might have a subscription of their own, and then the backend might as well have their own subscription. I think that answers your question, but I'm going to be demonstrating that when it comes to setting up your own Azure account. So don't worry, we are going to be exploring that as we move along. So for now, having created our storage account, I'm just going to, having reviewed our details that we set up earlier on, I'm just going ahead to click create. You realize that at the top here, we're having the initialization process. In other words, it is initializing the deployment status for our storage account, basing on the details that we set up earlier on. It is deploying our storage account within that region that we specified. The deployment as well takes a little bit longer, as you can see here. As we wait for that to finish in the background, I just want to emphasize on the credit bit of it. Remember some of the resources that you may create within Azure are kind of a little bit resource intensive, right? So you may need to shut down some of the things that you may explore within Azure, in order not to get get that sort of consumption. In other words, you need to have that sort of workflow where you need to trigger your resources in that when you reach a certain threshold, you get a chance to terminate your resources. In other words, you get a chance to terminate some of the consumption workflows. But essentially, I remember last time we held the event, my account was having $121, and I forgot to shut down the virtual machine that I had earlier on created. On waking up, my account had declined to 40, I think 40 something dollars. So I just want you to working with some of these resources. So we realize that our storage account has already been deployed. So I'm just going to click on go to the resource. So this is the storage account that we've created, and on the left-hand side, you realize that you have bits of details that you might actually explore for different workloads. But here we basically want to look at the Azure Blob storages, right? So remember earlier on, I said when it comes to the Azure Blob Storage, you're going to have, let me just go to that slide. When it comes to Azure Blob Storage, you're basically going to set up your Azure Storage account. And within that Azure Storage account, you're going to start by setting up a Blob Storage sort of workflow. And within that Blob Storage account, within that Azure Blob storage, you're going to come up with blob containers where you get to store bits of blobs. Like I said, blobs might be like images, videos, backups, and all that. So I'm just going to move back to my Azure portal, and we want to basically create an Azure Blob Storage. So first things first, like I said, you need to create a container. So on your left-hand side, you go to the container section. You click on container. As we wait, a container is basically like that sort of like a warehouse where you might have sorts of storages. So I'm just going to click on create, and on the right-hand side, that asks for the name of the container that you want to come up with. So I'm just going to call it demo. Oops, it is yelling at me. Basically, you need to have your container to lowercase letters, right? And you might as well include numbers, hyphens, but ensure that your name only has lowercase letters. So I'm just going to call this demo 101. Oops, still yelling at me. Demo 101, and then you might as well explore the advanced section of that, where you get to define the encryption scope. Like I said, in your organization, you might want have a restriction to some of the employees that might have access to your storage account. So you might as well go ahead and have that sort of encryption scope for your container as well. But for now, I'm just going to leave that to the default bit of that, which is the private access. And then I'll go ahead and click on create. So the container has been created successfully. I'm just going to go ahead and access that. So like I told you, within the container, you might want to create images, you might want to create videos for your application. So essentially, that is where you're going to be storing your data. So in here, I'm just going to be uploading some simple images just for demonstration. But you realize that you may go ahead and have some sort of professional workflows. You may not need to just upload random images. So I'm just going to browse on my computer, and I just want to upload these few files, right? So I'm just going to select these. These are images, and it's what I want to upload. Suppose you have several images that you're uploading, and they have that sort of in other words, they may be repeated. So you may go ahead and check that for overwriting the existing files. But for now, I'm just going to leave that as blank, because I'm sure that my files are actually new within the container. So I'm just going to upload that. Realize that it is pretty fast. Within a few seconds, they have been uploaded. So I'm just going to close this and take a look at some of the images that I have uploaded. This is one of the images that I've uploaded. I can go ahead and download if I've lost some of them from my computer. I can go ahead and download them. I can play around with the rest of the features as you might as well see within this Azure portal. But I'm just going to exit that, and I want to go back to my storage account. So within this, like I said, you might as well go ahead and create several containers to basically house your different blob storages. So that gives us an overview on how we can basically upload our images, videos, and all that. So I'm just going to go back to the slide presentation, and so that we move along. All right. So resuming from the previous slide, we want to switch gears and probably look at another storage format that you can use, leave alone the Azure Blob storages that we've been looking at. We want to basically look at the Azure Files and Q storage formats within Azure. And essentially, when it comes to Azure Files, think of Azure Files as a file storage format that lets you have access to cross-platform sharing capabilities. So suppose you're working on an application that you want to be accessible on different platforms. So you might as well go ahead and use. Okay, let me just admit this one. Right, you may as well go ahead and use Azure File Storage that lets you. Let me unmute this one. Okay, he has been muted. Well, like I was talking about the Azure File Storage, it lets you have that sort of cross-platform accessibility. So suppose you're developing an application, let's say Flutter framework. I don't know if it's a framework, but suppose you're developing your application in Flutter, and you want to have that sort of cross-platform accessibility for your data. So you might as well go ahead and use the Azure File Storage capability for your application to have access to your data. The Azure File Storage also offers the cloud to on-prem connectivity, where you get a chance to connect your data within the cloud to the data that is on the physical infrastructure, which is the on-prem connectivity of your organization. So essentially, that gives us that overview of the Azure File Storage. Looking at the Azure Q Storage. Now this one here lets you have that sort of asynchronous communication between different bits of your application. Like I said, you might be developing an e-commerce platform, but you want your e-commerce platform to basically communicate with different key components of your application, like communication with the cart section where the user adds the items to the cart. So essentially, you might come up with the Azure Q storage workflows. The practical applications for both of the storage solutions that we've looked at. For the Azure File Storage, you might come up with the application sharing bit of that, where you get to develop your application, and within that application, you might want within your application, you might want access to different data. So Azure File Storage gives you the capability to have that sort of synchronous communication with the rest of the application components. Moving along to the next slide, just want us to talk about the data redundancy. So you realize that when we are creating our Azure storage account, you get that sort of section where you get to choose the data redundancy and data availability workflows. And what that means is basically you want your application to basically, in other words, you want your data to be replicated to different regions. And some of the redundant options that you might have, one of them being the local redundant storage, where you get to replicate your data to different sub-regions within your local storage. You might as well use the geo redundant storage, where you replicate your data across different regions within the world. So essentially, this gives us a chance to store our data within different regions. Let's say, apart from storing our data within the South Africa region, we might as well maybe want to have our data stored in maybe some parts of Asia region. So the importance of that data redundancy is basically to have the durability of our data, and maybe probably have an easy access to our data. Suppose we run into some sort of a disaster, like floods within a location where your company is located. So the geo-redundant sort of storage gives us that capability to basically store our data in different regions across the globe. Moving along, we also have the read access geolocation storage, which is essentially similar to geo-redundant storage, but this one actually offers extra capabilities that you may explore. So moving along, when you're basically developing an application, like I said earlier on, your team may consist of back-end engineers, front-end engineers. So in Azure storage accounts, we have several APIs that may use for your applications that you may be developing to basically have access to your storage accounts. We also have the client libraries, some being in C++, JavaScript, Python, Node.js, Ruby, any kind of language that you're developing your application with. So I'll be providing the links to these client libraries as well, so that you may explore fully. So before probably I could demonstrate on how you can set up your account. I just want us to maybe probably answer some of your questions. If you have any questions, please let me know so that I may as well answer those before we move to setting up your account in Azure. I believe most of us have not set up their accounts, so I want us to first of all I want us to first of all set up I want to first of all answer your queries before we move to setting up those accounts. So any question? Yes, Jonah.
Yes, I was asking about the Azure Blob Storage. What type of
Yes.
database do they use? Do they use relational database management systems or non-relational database management systems?
Like I said, when it comes to Azure Blob Storage, you may store your data that is actually unstructured. So by unstructured, I mean your data that is that is actually binary. By binary, I mean you may have images, videos. So blob storage basically is for binary storages. In other words, it's for unstructured data. But if you want to store your data in a structured format, like the NoSQL data, like storing your data in table formats, you may as well use another service. Let me just present that in my Azure portal. Just going to stop this and then share the other. So you realize that in the Azure account that I created earlier on, in the Azure storage account that I created, let me just click on go to resource. So you realize that here we have different sorts of data storage capabilities. Containers are basically for blob storages, like I told you earlier on. You may as well store them in queues, the ones that we've been looking at, where you get that sort of asynchronous communication between different components of your applications that you're developing. You may as well store your data in table formats, where you basically create a table. Maybe I may call this as a customer table. You get the idea on how you can create these tables for your for your application. But this is just a demo. So you realize that my table has been created, and within that table you can probably go ahead and start maybe populating data within this table. And how do you do that? You basically copy this URL and then reference that within wherever you're creating your table from. So I think that answers your question. Does it?
Yes, sir.
All right. If there's any other question, just let me know before we move ahead to creating our account. Because I believe many of us have not created our accounts. So I want to answer that as soon as possible, because whatever we are studying, we need to have hands-on practice, hands-on ability. So any other question before we move along? Any other question? All right, so I'm just going to demonstrate on how you can get access to the $100 credit, 100 Azure credit, $100 credit, dollar credit within Azure. So essentially, you just need to get access to this website. Let me share this within the chat. So you go ahead and click on that link. I just want us to have this as a practical demo. Let me first of all stop sharing so that I share only one. Just give me a minute. All right. So go ahead and click on the link that I've shared in the chat, and then just give me a thumbs up if you're done with clicking on the link that I've shared in the chat, so that we move along as we say now. So having clicked on the link that I've shared in the chat, I want you to click on the start free. So when you're to click on start free, it's actually going to prompt you to sign in with your personal account. It may actually be a Gmail one, Hotmail, Outlook, any account that you have, but it actually has to be a personal account, not for a company. It has to be a personal account. So it's going to be to prompt you to sign in with your personal account. I have one for it's an Outlook one. And, after that you click sign in, and of course, having signed in, just taking a couple of minutes. So having signed in with your personal account, remember I told you it might be an Outlook account, an Hotmail account, any kind of an account, but any kind of account, but you need not to sign up with your organization account. So this page here basically gives you details that are sections that you can fill in order to be verified as a student. If you're not a student, just be sure to get access to the Azure free subscription by signing up with your credit account. But for now, since I believe most of you are students here on the call, so obviously you just need to give your first name, last name, and then the country where you're based in. I believe most of you are here in Uganda. And I believe most of you are from different universities. So suppose you're from Ndege, you can just type in Ndege University. If you're from Makerere, be sure to also type in that as well. Yeah, I'm just going to choose by that. Of course, you can choose your date of birth. Just going to choose a random one. Choose 2004. Just that. And then here you provide an email address for your university. Maybe it may not be a university, but it may be a college. So you provide an email for your university. So suppose my university is Uganda Institute, right? Whatever. And then at maybe inc.sc.ug. So that's what that's what you put in, and then you're going to be sending a verification code on that email, and then you're going to be verified within a few seconds, actually within a few minutes. So you just need to maybe verify that you are a human being, and then yeah, that's all. And at the end of the day, you're going to be having that fully working account. Still, if you get any error, just ping me on WhatsApp so that I can help you within all that. Any question before we end today's call? Any question? Any question before we end the call?